got some opening bit action.
Okay, good. I'll let you. You can just kick off after you do the
I don't
start.
imagine you have any.
Do I? Do I? I guess I could talk about the rat in the wall, but he's gone.
You got a rat in the wall.
We had a rat in the wall the other day.
All right.
Also, the mysterious gushing water inside of the other wall.
We had a squirrel in the attic in Beacon.
Ah, I remember that. Spackle House had
been on the roof. It was hard to tell.
All right, I'll just start. You can do your opening bit.
Okay. Did you push it?
Yep.
All right.
It's Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about Lupin III, the First. All right, whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Do you think?
So, 2 days ago-ish, right? Sunday night through early yesterday, there was a blizzard in New York. It dumped a whole ton of snow, like top 10 snows of New York. It was big time snow.
It was the kind of snow where if it wasn't COVID times, I literally would have taken days off work and like gotten myself upstate to stay at a ski place.
If it wasn't COVID times, I would have stayed in like it was COVID times.
Yeah, I also would have gotten a snow day.
My office would have closed.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't have been like actually work from home like all day. It would have been the work from home as in do what you can, but yes, no.
It would have been closed. Yeah. Anyway, so when it snows like that in New York, right? You don't really want to order food delivery, even if you can, because that is such a jerk move. Right? Food delivery people shouldn't be risking their life to bring you a dinner when in the middle of a blizzard, right?
My policy has always been that if the weather's bad to a certain point, I'll just give a giant tip, like $20 or $30. And if it's beyond that point, I won't order in.
Order it if it's raining or something, like, and I really need the food, maybe I'll do it and pay a lot, but...
But there's a line.
There is a line. And you can tell that most people agree with this policy because every time I looked out the window, you did not see any delivery people. I think I saw one on like the morning after, right? I saw one and that was it, right? So people are, not, but then again, it's like, I wonder from the perspective of a delivery person, like you must be in a tough spot. You're like, damn, I want money, right? I'm not making anything today, but also, damn, I don't want to go outside.
Yep.
Or, get in an accident. Who knows what, right? So it's a tough spot. I don't know, but you just feel guilty doing it, right? So anyway, it comes this morning, and you look outside, and the road is clear. It's perfectly plowed and melted, and it's not precipitating, and the sun's out, and you're like, okay, it's still cold as hell. But now I'm in a situation where without guilt, I can order delivery with a big old tip on there.
Yep, it already got warm enough. Snow's already like melted significantly.
Right. And since we've been inside for a few days and Fresh Direct canceled our delivery for good reason, right? We needed some food. So
the day the blizzard happened, I put in a delivery slot for Thursday.
Yeah, ours is also Thursday, but we had like a Monday, and it was canceled.
I luckily happened to have gotten a Saturday, so I was good.
Anyway, point is, needing food, roads clear, guilt gone, tip big. I'm okay ordering bagels for breakfast, right? That'll carry us for, whenever. So order the bagels, and I'm getting ready to bike inside like I've been doing in the morning. And the bagel, I realized is suspiciously late, right? It should have been here already, right? So I go and I check. I'm looking at the thing, what time it said it was going to be here. It said it would be here like, 8:37. It's already like, closer to 9 or whatever. And I'm like, looking closely and I go, oh shit, I forgot to click delivery. The default is pickup.
The
bagels must be sitting at the bagel place. And the thing is, if I go to get bagels outside, there's close places that are not even at the subway. But if I get delivery, there's a better bagel place that's further away.
Yep. Like if I go out to get a breakfast sandwich, there's a place I'll go. But if I'm ordering a delivered breakfast sandwich, there's a very specific different place I will go.
That's right. So I had to suddenly not bike inside this morning, not do any normal morning stuff, and instead put clothing on, which is why I'm wearing clothing.
I was about to say, you're wearing like a real shirt. Like I had
to go outside. So
I got all these Hawaiian shirts that I usually would wear like just when I'm lounging around. So I'm doing like that because they kind of look like a dress-ish shirt because there's technically a collar. And I just got pajamas on otherwise.
Yeah, I know, right? So I had to go outside this morning and walk all the way down the road to get the bagels. They were just sitting there waiting for me.
Uh, you know, it's
It was
almost a
not-
nice excuse to just be outside, though. Like, I look forward to
Yeah,
the
but meanwhile,
excuses.
I gave a huge tip, which I guess should have gone to me. But instead, I guess the bagel preparers have that money now, which is fine. But
Yeah.
you know,
Hopefully it goes to them and not to like the owner of the place. If there was
yeah,
no
I'm
delivery.
sure they see it.
Well, because
you know,
Amazon just got hit with like stealing the tips from all their drivers. Like that was a big
Right,
thing.
but the way the systems work usually at these places is, you know, you go into any restaurant in New York City, especially a takeout delivery type restaurant, they have a tablet and maybe even a printer if they're more old school, right? But usually just a tablet sitting there, like maybe one tablet per service or one tablet with all the services,
Yep.
some kind of setup. And they can see exactly the invoices of everyone putting in orders, right? And then they transfer that over to their internal system, right? Usually printing out a ticket for like, you know, a receipt for what to make and such, right?
Yeah.
So it'll say on there, you know, I've seen it because it's right there. You can see it. It says, such and such a tip, right? So if the owner was, you know, keeping all those monies, because I guess all that money, you know, digitally goes to the owner's account, the people who are working, they still see how much all those tips are. So if at the end of the month, you know, the owner comes back and is like, here, $1 for everybody, they'd be like, I saw what people were tipping.
Yep.
you know, I didn't add it up on my own, but I know what people are doing on average. Just don't seem right. So anyway.
So you got there's a bunch of news actually. I was surprised. Usually Wednesdays we struggle unless we've watched something to Geek Bite.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I think the most important one to me personally is about who you're gonna call.
So when we were kids, right, there was Ghostbusters the movie, Ghostbusters 2 the movie,
Yep.
right?
There was the
was
Ghostbusters cartoon that was not the one that we wanted to watch.
Exactly. I didn't even know about that one until internet time.
I used to watch it.
It didn't air where I lived.
It aired where I lived, and it was like there were kids who watched it and knew about that and even the original live action show. Like,
But yeah, there was some other show called Ghostbusters that was cartoon that had nothing to do with the Ghostbusters movie.
it's the one with the Jeep and the giant gorilla. Like, that's how you know it's not the real
It was
Ghostbusters.
basically a Scooby-Doo knockoff, right? As far as I remember.
I had a bunch of toys for that Ghostbusters.
Anyway, so but then the real reason that kids were fans of Ghostbusters in, you know, late 80s, early 90s times, right? Whenever those times were, I guess that was the time, right?
Yeah.
Was not because of that original movie, you know, although we did watch it and
Yeah.
enjoy it.
I loved that movie as a little kid.
Right, but Ghostbusters carried forward with greater fandom instead of just, you know, there were a lot of like single movies that kids were a fan of, right? That didn't carry, you know, for example, like RoboCop, right? It's
No,
like,
RoboCop had the cartoon that I watched.
but RoboCop cartoon was not a long-lasting deal.
Well, when the RoboCop cartoon faded away, so too did RoboCop fandom among kids. There was kids knew the Predator, but there wasn't a Predator cartoon for them to watch.
Right. So you know, you needed to keep, you know, in those days, there was no internet. You needed to keep some production up, right? To have kids carry on with your property like Ninja Turtles did, right? You were bombarded with new Ninja Turtle stuff all the time. It's still going. It's still going, right? So Ghostbusters, how did Ghostbusters keep going? There was a cartoon that you know called The Real Ghostbusters. And there was also a toy line to go with the show.
I had all those goddamn toys. Oh my God.
The best toy, the one I had was that like maid old lady witch where you pulled her hat up and there was an eyeball under there. And if you pulled her whole head up, like her whole body opened up like a mouth.
So the thing about those toys were basically based on the cartoon, not the movie. And the cartoon, unlike all the other cartoons we were watching in that era, even though I was actually starting to watch anime in that era because my family got me into it, the Ghostbusters cartoon was good, dark, and fucked up. Like, way more fucked up than I think a lot of parents realized.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of why it was so popular with kids, because kids would watch it and be like, wow, that was fucked up. And then we watch He-Man, like, wow, what's this plebeian, boring cartoon compared to the Ghostbusters?
Yeah, and it actually, the Real Ghostbusters cartoon didn't stray too far from the movie, right? It's like usually a lot of times, even as a kid, you can get angry at like, poor adaptations, right? The sort of thing like, hey, you took Tom Bombadil out,
Yeah.
right? That sort of thing, right? Even as a kid, you'd get angry at that sort of stuff. I remember, you read Jurassic Park and then you watch the movie and you'd be like, hey!
Yeah.
you changed all this bullshit. But the Real Ghostbusters cartoon, it wasn't exactly the same, right? Let's not get carried away.
But it followed that, like, the canon of that movie's
was
universe.
Not a friend of the Ghostbusters in the movie. Right? He was a one-time enemy that they.
But if you think about the Ghostbusters movie, what it implies that no one in the movie addresses is like this Cthulhu-esque, like existential terror world that humans inhabit briefly. And the cartoon just leaned into that.
The Real Ghostbusters was a great cartoon. I remember it being a great cartoon, right? And not being crappy like a lot of other ones that don't live up.
Yep.
But now the news, why is this news? We can now prove to ourselves whether our memory is correct. They are putting the Real Ghostbusters cartoon on YouTube. Supposedly the whole thing eventually for free. Maybe. Who knows? But regardless, there's at least some episodes, at least one up there now on the Ghostbusters YouTube channel, I think, right?
The last time I tried to verify if this was kid memory or if it was legit was in RIT. We pirated like one episode and we all watched it together. The one where at one point it was raining croutons. That's the scene I remember.
Okay. But yeah. So now if you were not of our age, or if you've never seen it, even if you are of our age or older, right, I recommend you actually do go and attempt to watch some of this at least to see what was up. It's notable, noteworthy quality,
It was a solid show. Well, we'll find out if it was truly a solid show because you're all going to watch it and you might come back in the comments and be like, Ribbon Scott, you're just old.
Exactly.
That could easily happen. So in some other news, a little bit of a geek bite. So I'm not super into the MCU. Like, I don't really enjoy a lot of those movies. But WandaVision, which I'm sure you've heard of. I'm not going to try to explain it. But WandaVision is a show that you can just watch that is set in
Disney Plus, though, right?
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus.
You can't just watch it if you don't have Disney Plus.
I mean, I have Disney Plus, so it's a show that appeared one episode by episode. 3 episodes came out, and then a 4th one happened. So I've seen enough to see where it's going, and it's higher concept than I expected. I expected it to be good because of the concept, which I'll get into in a second. When I watched episode 1, because Scott, you had this idea.
I didn't watch it at all.
You should probably watch it. The problem is episode 1 is good at being a very clever and deep homage to an era of television with a fun twist.
Based on the still image I saw with the logo, that is exactly what I assumed the whole show would be.
The second episode does that from the next decade of television. And at that point, yeah, it upgrades. Imagine the first episode, I Love Lucy. Next episode, Bewitched.
Oh, okay. That's even more clever than I had given it credit for. I like it.
And especially because the cleverness...
I'm sweetening.
The cleverness is deep, as in every tiny little detail. If you're a kid who watched Nick at Night, or you're just old, you'll notice a lot of very subtle, bits and very subtle components.
That would be a miss on people who weren't familiar with the tropes of 50s, 60s, 70s television.
In episode 1, there's a moment where something happens, they're laying in their separate beds and they hear a noise out the window. But they do some magic and pull the beds together. Anyway, so the second episode worried me because it was still just homage. And as much as I like homage to those eras of television, the second episode wasn't as funny as an actual episode of Bewitched or I Love Lucy, which were both really funny shows.
Right. But I'm guessing here already, just as somebody who simply has knowledge of the characters, even though I don't watch Marvel movies.
There's something going on.
Is that clearly, right? This the best, the only good Scarlet Witch I don't know any comics personally that involve the Vision that are any good. Even
I know
though the
less
Vision
about comics than you, but I can know enough to say that House of M is the only interesting storyline I've ever even heard of that involves the Scarlet Witch. And Vision, I didn't know anything about.
That's exactly right. Vision is an Avenger who's a robot and should be awesome because in concept, it's
I didn't even know he was Avenger. I just knew he was a robot. I assumed he was from space.
Or whatever,
I knew he was like a robot from space, and I didn't know anything else.
Something like that. But the point is,
like, didn't Ultron make him or something?
I don't know, something like that. But in concept, he should be really awesome. But in reality, I've never read a comic with the Vision where he was interesting or cool at all. He was lame. And I keep saying lame. I'm trying not to.
I know you're working on it.
Working on it. And the Scarlet Witch I've never read a comic book other than House of M where the Scarlet Witch was cool. Other than I never cared about the Scarlet Witch other than in her relation to Magneto. It's Magneto's daughter, right?
Yep.
And that's what made her cool, not any of her powers or anything, except for House of M, which is an X-Men storyline in which she creates some alternate universe that all the mutants are trapped in, and it's kind of, it's ridiculous, but still good. So as soon as you tell me that the second episode is a decade later, it's like, oh, this whole WandaVision thing, she's created an alternate universe they stole from the comic books again without giving credit to the people.
Yeah, it's obvious that this is you watch it right away. If you know anything about the Scarlet Witch, that's the first thing I thought is, okay, clearly the Scarlet Witch has created this universe. Now, how close will it be to House of M? Like, what's it gonna do? Like, that's the only thing I didn't know.
That seems to keep happening. And I guess I noticed it more because I've been following this Twitter account. There's a Twitter account called, I guess, the Claremont Run, right? Because this is guy John Claremont who wrote basically all the X-Men comics that are famous. The Dark Phoenix ones. All those were all written by this Claremont. Oh, Claremont and Byrne, but Byrne left. Claremont's like the guy, right?
Yeah.
He's still alive too, but they mentioned they do basically it posts like one thread a morning, and the threads are always great. But they talk about hey, they made all these X-Men stuff right in Hollywood, and all of it is based on basically mostly John Claremont's work. It's not based on the other X-Men storylines, right? It's mostly based on these original stories that John Claremont wrote, and they didn't hire him to write the X-Men movies. They don't credit him that much. Maybe he was a cameo in one or something. I don't know if he's getting money or what, but it's like everything they make is based on his original work. Those are original stories, right? He wrote those from, in the back in the day on his own.
Yeah.
And now people are just rewriting Dark Phoenix 5 times over. It's like he should be getting paid 5 times over. Credited 5 times over, and he's not.
Right.
So if they're doing House of M here, right, as WandaVision, shouldn't they? I don't know who wrote House of M. It's probably a name I know, but I don't know I can't pull the name out of my ass without Googling it. But is that person getting the credit? Are they writing this show? Right.
Yep. So
if the person who wrote the original thing you're adapting, right? You making Lord of the Rings the movie, Tolkien is not alive, so it's understandable, right? But if he was alive, why would you just not get him to write the movie?
Yep. So
it makes no sense.
Here's an example how the show goes. They're doing this homage, but then one color object appears in the first episode, and Wanda sees it and kind of gets unnerved by it. And a character kind of glitches out a little bit in a weird way, and no one can deal. It's trying to figure out. The second episode gets weirder. There's a few more moments like that, and my worry was the show's just gonna be it's the homage plus a couple weird things and just go through all the decades. But it did not. The third episode, everything becomes color. Now it's the Partridge Family / the Brady Bunch, and also the plot escalates rapidly. And I'm not going to spoil much because the show's worth watching because it's not that long so far. The fourth episode goes to basically the outside of people trying to figure out what the fuck's going on. And it turns into a proper superhero story. And I'm actually really enjoying it. The second episode, I got a little worried. Third episode, I was unworried. And now the fourth episode, it's fun. I see what they're doing. I like it.
It says that, they pitched it to... they pitched it that it would be based on House of M and some other stories, right?
Yep.
So that was already in their thoughts. And House of M was written by Brian Michael Bendis and Olivier Coipel. I knew those names. I just didn't know they were the ones who wrote it. And they don't seem to be involved. Other people are writing it. I wish I could do that. Like, it's like, when you own intellectual property like that, I guess you can, sort of plagiarize people without it being plagiarism, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to keep watching it. I'm not bored with it. I'm enjoying it more than I've enjoyed most MCU things.
I'm going to continue to not watch MCU things.
Yeah, you might. You could probably stand to at least watch just the first episode because you at least will appreciate the ridiculous level of detail they put into this.
But I could just watch like I Dream of Jeannie again.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's on the internet somewhere.
I think Bewitched was funnier, and honestly, I Love Lucy is funnier than both of those.
Better because the guy was an astronaut, right? So there was that whole thing going on.
Yeah, I can see that, but honestly, I Love Lucy is the one that I love the most.
Sometimes.
Of course, I was weirdly into Andy Griffith as well. Like, I earnestly enjoy that show.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, I was really into Dragnet because I didn't know. So, in some other brief news, the One Piece manga, like, everyone's heard of One Piece. Even people who don't read comics, like, they hear of, like, oh, that's that pirate thing, right? I don't think people fully appreciate how widely read One Piece is.
All right, so I want to just put this into perspective for you, right? So here's some numbers from Wikipedia, right? So the numbers from Wikipedia say that if you consider all Batman comics ever, right, the floppy ones, right, because the number of trade paperbacks of Batman that have been sold are not significant, right? So the number of Batman floppy comics sold, there have been about 17,000-ish issues of Batman comics of one type or another since 1939. So how many? So 70 years, we're going to say, right? From 1940 to 2021, 1939, 21, 70 years, right? Of Batman comics. All of those floppy issues added up, they sold 484 million floppy comics-ish, right?
All right.
Based on rough numbers, right? So you got to think 484 million divided by 40 years divided by 12 months, because those are monthly floppies, right? Is basically the number of people at, ish that read Batman, right? Turns right? Like
the uniques, not the
count,
uniques and turnstiles. Right? I was about to say
exactly. Okay, One Piece sells by the volume, right? And has 98 volumes. There are 98 volumes of One Piece, and those volumes have sold 480 million. So about the same number as floppies of Batman. But you're only dividing not by 17,000 issues, but by 98 volumes. So you're dividing by 100. So what's 480 million divided by 100? 4.8 million, right? What's 480 million divided by 17,000 issues, right? And then you also got to consider the years, right? Batman it took 484 million sales of floppies. They had to go for 70 years. One Piece came out in 1997. It's only not even 25 years old, One Piece.
Oh, that just makes me feel old because I remember like when One Piece started and I was like, that show looks like it's going to be like that comic's too.
I didn't know One Piece existed until about 4 or 5 years after, 3 to 5 years after.
I guess I bet.
didn't know about One Piece in 1997.
I think I didn't know about it until like 1998 or 99 when I think back.
I didn't know about One Piece until 2000.
Because I was super into anime and manga in high school, but I knew one guy, only one person, who was way more into it than I was.
But anyway,
and he was like, "Oh, this is pirate thing."
One Piece anime, but I guess we're not counting VTAS either, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's the volumes, right? If you count the actual Shonen Jumps that One Piece is in, right? We're talking billions, right? So people just are not like realizing, I think, scope-wise in America, there's this perception of like the big two. We talked about this before, right?
Yeah, there's the marketing machine of, Marvel and DC sell all these comics.
In other industries, there are big X, right? There's like how many big book publishers? There's less and less every day. It's like, or record companies, there's the big this many, right? And in every industry there's like a big X, some very small number, like less than 5 handful of companies that are the big ones, and everyone else is medium or small. In US comics, there's this perception of the big two, DC and Marvel, and it's true that their intellectual properties of superheroes are big in the culture wise, right? But in terms of comics, they are not actually big, right? In terms of all comics sold, not even in the US, but definitely in the world, they are not big. It's like Batman comics are, they're more popular than other superhero comics, but it's like in terms of all comics in the world, they are not that popular. Like, One Piece is the king of comics throughout all history, and and even starting at One Piece, you've got to go far down the list before you find Batman. It's like Garfield crushes, Batman easily.
Like
right?
Archie comics are widely read.
Oh yeah, I mean, Fist of the North Star crushes it, right? It's like Asterix and Obelisk, they crush it. I assume that like probably Donald Duck comics crush it, depending on how many you include in your tally, right? Tintin probably crushes all superhero comics ever, right? So you need this perspective correction, I think, if you're thinking about comics and how popular they are, relatively speaking. And it's such a big reality distortion. That's why I feel the need to bring it up repeatedly, right?
Maybe the Scarlet Witch is involved.
It takes that much repetition to sort of break the spell, right, of false perception.
Well, like what we always just talk about with conventions and the turnstile counts and all these conventions saying, "Oh yeah, 200,000 people showed up at our convention." Like, nah, that's not the number everyone thinks it is. There are not 200,000 people in that building.
San Diego Comic-Con was, so like 10 times bigger than Otakon, when it was really just kind of bigger than it, not that much bigger.
Of course, it'll be infinitely bigger than Otakon if things don't pan out for Otakon this year, which we talked about on the last show.
That's true. Do we have another news, or is that it?
We'll just skip because the other news was just the broader convention thing, but I think we already covered that enough. Let me hit Mark. There we go. But things of the day. So what do you got?
So we both saw the same thing in a tweet today, even though the thing itself is a year old. But I snatched it as thing of the day first, so deal with it.
Yep, I had it queued up for the show, and then Scott was like, "Oh yeah, here's my thing of the day," and he sent it to me. And our rule is, if you send the other person your thing of the day, it's theirs. That's dibs.
That's right. You get dibs. So there's an animation studio in London that I didn't know about, but apparently this animation studio, I did some quick research on them. They really remind me of the early days of Studio Gonzo's making all commercial animations of high quality, right? Gonzo used to do like video game intros and those sorts of things, right? So for example, the animated Wargroove, little short Wargroove promo animation, they made that. So the thing that they made a year ago is this 90-second, right? It's a minute and a half long. It's a song, and it looks like a trailer or an opener to an animation that doesn't exist. And
all I want is to see the show that this was pretending to be.
Oh, you might. So the show this was made a year ago. They uploaded it, but it might, there's been a lot of hints. It might be coming for real. Is called The Mighty Grand Piton. And what it is, basically, you watch this in 90 seconds, you get the whole concept. There is a black girl from London, and her family goes on vacation to the Caribbean, to like St. Lucia, I think, one of those islands. I don't know the names. There's too many islands. Sorry, I don't know all the Caribbean islands. That's my bad. And on that island, it's pretty much an Iron Giant situation. She finds a giant robot, right, anime style, and fights, what seems to be like giant, monsters of some kind. There's a giant ant in the animation that you can see it fighting, and adventures and such and such. So this is awesome because there's tons of anime like this, but little kid, giant robot, right? But it almost always involves a young Japanese boy, like 99% of the time, and a young white boy, like 1% of the time. It almost never involves a young girl who's got a robot to themselves, and definitely not a black girl, and definitely not on a Caribbean island. So that's just like A+ on, not even A+, it's S+ on
this just looks great, and it gives me that
animation is great, and the song is great.
Yeah,
right, that goes to this.
I was about to say, it gave me that same feel of that 2Mix video, White Reflection, everyone saw, where everyone said, "Oh, I want to see the anime of that." Like, it gave me that same feeling.
It's just a music video. It's like, what do you mean anime?
Yeah.
But here, no, I really hope that, we've seen some good animation coming from Ireland. Why not from the big island? Right?
Albion.
People from the Albion Island make animation about, the Caribbean island. That would be terrific. I hope.
The best thing about this, the
hints about this becoming an actual show/movie are true. But yeah, this is more than worth 90 seconds of your time. Watch it 2 times.
The top comment on the YouTube video from a year ago is, "The whole world needs to see this."
Sure. Yes.
So
why not?
You played the clarinet and know some music, so you know about time signatures, right?
3/4.
3/4, 4/4. You know what that means. 4/4 means we're speaking in quarter notes, and there are 4 quarter notes in a measure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. That's pretty straightforward. But
one thing that wasn't straightforward is you got 4/4, right?
Yeah.
Which means you got 4 per measure, right? You got
4 quarter notes per measure. That's the same as 1/1. One whole note per measure. It is the same.
Right. So if you made 8/8, it wouldn't be any different.
It wouldn't actually be any different. Usually, it just means you'll draw all the 8th notes out. It's sort of like how you'll draw the music. 2/4 and 4/4 can be written. So there's a lot of
sure.
So
but they're equivalent. And that's why people don't bother doing. There's only certain ones people actually use unless they're ridiculous.
And then there's the ones like 6/8 where we're talking about 8th notes, but there'll be groups of them like groups of triplets, but that still makes sense.
Yeah.
So what about the weird ones? Every kid knows that there's that weird song in the time signature of 5/4, Mars, Bringer of War. The classic song. It's at 5/4. There's 5 quarter notes per measure, and it makes it unwieldy and difficult to listen to, and it's a whole thing. What if I told you that 15/16 is a commonly used and amazing time signature that you've probably never thought of or heard of?
I probably heard songs in it and just not thought about that they were 15/16.
Probably haven't actually heard that many, because usually the way you get the feeling of 15/16 is like a funk groove, which isn't often written in 15/16. So this video is Adam Neely. This is a backup thing of the day because I had to scramble because Scott got the good thing. I had this queued up as a backup since Christmas. This is Christmas songs, a bunch of Christmas songs you've heard, rewritten into the time signature of 15/16.
Oh, I think I saw this. You posted it.
I think I posted it in our group or maybe even in the forum, but they're all amazing.
Mm-hmm.
They're really fun to listen to. I particularly like God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen in 15/16. In the meta moment, I'm edging toward reading books because I can't go anywhere and I'm just stuck inside. And at some point, I got to just not play Hades and do a non-Hades thing if I'm just sitting around.
Yeah, I'm reading a game that is very book-like. I'm already on my second play, and then I'm reading comics. But yeah, I haven't read the book club quite yet.
I'm getting there, though. Because the problem is Overwatch has been good again. There's been a lot more capture the flag action in the arcade, which is a problem because I'll just sit in there forever. But yeah, stay tuned. We'll probably be reading the book at some point in the nearing future. Otherwise, stay tuned for whatever online cons we do. The online convention scene has dried up a little bit.
I think people have realized, they don't really make money.
Yep. And especially for cons that are struggling to survive COVID until a post-COVID world, there's online cons just cost them a lot of money and resources, but don't actually get them anything. And especially online cons don't really give that same feeling that people expect. So a lot of cons are struggling to make a useful and good online con experience.
It's over and over. A con is not the content provider. A con is a logistics provider. And if you don't have any need of those logistics, if you're not going to a place, so they have nothing to offer unless their brand is stronger than the brands that they can put on their platform.
And it's hard. Well, because it's not like the old days where cons had content that literally did not exist anywhere else. Anime cons in the early days were, yo, kid, you want to see some anime? This is the only goddamn place you can see it at all.
So for most cons, even the biggest cons, right? San Diego Comic-Con, the biggest con, right? The online platform of San Diego Comic-Con is weaker than like the online platform of like a single like Artist Alley person.
Yep, they're like a glass cannon whose sole purpose is to make people be able to buy badges, see the schedule, show up.
Right. So like you just pick a random, weeb in the anime Artist Alley table selling, I don't know, crocheted cutie stuff, right? Like you see it, a typical Artist Alley table you would see. You go find them at San Diego Comic-Con. They probably don't have as many Twitter followers as San Diego Comic-Con does, but I guarantee you, like their online, community engagement that they have with their customers is probably better than how people have with San Diego Comic-Con itself. People aren't looking at, Comic-Con Twitter for stuff.
Right.
So there's not that much that Comic-Con can even offer them other than that's not the actual con.
And most of what I've enjoyed from online cons have just been panels, and that's what we do at online cons. But we could just do those on our own. Like, we don't actually even need an excuse.
YouTube channels with Pete that have a talking head style are just someone doing panels on their own constantly.
Yep.
That's all they are. We just do a lot less panels if we only do them live.
Yep, because it's more fun to do them live. And I think we said this before. You know why we haven't made a whole bunch of videos during COVID? Because it's not fun to make videos when Scott's in Astoria and I'm in LIC. It's way more fun when we do them together in front of one camera.
Anyway.
So let's just get right into it. Lupin III the First is not only the latest iteration of Lupin movies, and I'm saying quotes because if you look at the history of Lupin, you've basically got the manga, you've got the TV series, and then you've got the specials, some of which were theatrical movies and some of which were basically OAVs.
Some of which are OAVs. I think there were some direct-to-TV movies, possibly.
Yep.
Basically, any format of video that exists, right? Any distribution mechanism for video, like Lupin has been there, right? They just keep making more Lupin stuff, right? At a steady stream for as long as Lupin has existed. Make a little short series here, make a movie there. They just keep coming and coming and coming. It doesn't stop. It's going forever.
We'll say that there's there's a median Lupin, and these specials. Let's not talk about the TV series. Just these specials, these movie-like things, these one-offs. They vary to a surprising degree, both in tone and quality, because much like James Bond, it's like a different director takes I'm going to do a Lupin, and they'll take this palette of characters and this palette of tropes, and they'll construct their own Lupin. So in the same universe that has Lupin, the Castle of Cagliostro, you've got Legend of Babylon Gold.
Yeah, and what was the one that was mostly about Zenigata, and he was
the Fuma Conspiracy. No. Yeah, that's the one about Goemon.
He's just the normal, really good one. What's the one where Zenigata's fired, and he's he's sad in Japan.
Yep.
I want to watch that one again. I just forget which one it was.
They're all. The thing is, I like them all, even the stupid ones.
Oh yeah,
I just like Lupin. Babylon Gold, we make fun of because it's got a lot of flaws, but I would watch it again.
There's worse things to watch.
The one with Hermaphrodite is probably the worst one.
That's a real bad one.
That one just sucks. But
isn't that Desert something?
Yeah, Desert. I think we even showed it at the Anime Club.
For me, the median Lupin is the Assassin Island one.
That
is the default. It's good. It's not amazing. It's not bad. It's just this is Lupin. He has to go to this island, island. Of assassins and deal with them and such and such.
But there's actually, and this is what I want to get into before we do this review, it's a two-dimensional chart because there's median Lupin in terms of quality and there's median Lupin in terms of how close to the standard tropes is it. Because
I think the thing is, people, a lot of Lupin fans always talk about the jacket color, which isn't always a complete.
Well, a case in point, this is closer to a green jacket Lupin, even though he's wearing red.
Exactly. That's what you can't fully rely on the jacket color, but there is sort of a up to a certain point a correlation between Lupin's jacket color, whether it's green or red.
Yeah,
or who knows
green Lupin. Just regardless of what he's actually wearing, is the Cagliostro, good guy at heart, always does the right thing, mischievous but not outright evil.
Right. if you watch like Lupin TV series, like the one we watched most of,
He
which was on
murders
Toonami,
so many people in the first fucking episode.
right? Or if you read the Lupin manga, the old actual Monkey Punch one, it's like he is lewd, crude, murderous, actually
Lewd,
stealing
crude, rude
things,
dude.
actually a criminal, actually a bad, kind of person. Like,
Like
it's
Green
what
Jacket
kind of-
Lupin will like knock someone out and get away. That manga Lupin will machine gun down an entire room of unrelated and innocent dinner party guests.
Yep, to steal stuff, right? He's actually a thief, right? But the movies, especially the theatrical ones, they tend to really tone it down, right? And make Lupin more of a sympathetic character. Like, yes, he's a thief, right? But, this time he's stealing things. He's using his thief-like skills, but he cares about people. So he's not going to, compromise, goodness, right? To do thieving, right?
But
and allow the greed to overcome his other desires.
But there's also this like, I don't want to say high concept, low concept, but like some of these Lupins are just like a by the book, like here is every Lupin trope in the correct order, beginning to end. Like Goemon and Jigen will show up at this point. Fujiko Mine will show up at the first part, fuck Lupin over, get away, reappear later to help him, but then fuck him over again.
And chase Lupin, and not catch him, and then maybe catch him, but then he gets away and uses disguise trick.
But then, like, you break away from those tropes, and you get the ones where, like, Lupin and Zenigata openly team up, like, for real, or the ones where Zenigata tries to kill Lupin, like. So
there are also some of them go into more supernatural territories, like the Mamo one, right?
Yeah.
They get into like real weird stuff. Like what the heck is going on?
Well, like
here?
Legend of Babylon Gold, spoilers, aliens are coming back for their fucking gold.
Right, exactly. So there's all sorts of some of them go into the supernatural territory, and some of them stick to this more realistic territory.
Yep.
Right?
Realistic in that Cagliostro is very realistic, except for the acrobatics of Lupin and that car chase.
Right, but there isn't like actual magic or actual wizards or actual any supernatural ghosts, right? They'll either be a hint of them, but then a Scooby-Doo reveal that they were actually some science or mechanism, or they won't be there at all.
So the last context before we dive straight into this movie is that there was a long period of time where the Lupin specials and shows and everything were just like kind of super bad to the point that a lot of them weren't worth watching. And then starting around the time of the Fujiko Mine anime TV series, the quality like suddenly returned.
What was the like? Was it Jigen's Grave? What was that one?
That's the next. So Fujiko Mine was like the one that like really did something interesting and different. I think we reviewed it a while ago. That show was amazing. Then after that, in a similar style, is the Grave of Jigen Daisuke.
Oh, that came after that?
Yes.
Okay, I can't remember what the order was. I'll trust you.
I would say that cluster of Lupin set off a Lupin renaissance, and Lupin III the First is a top tier Lupin.
It's pretty up there.
It's not number one, but it's like top 5, top 10 at worst.
This is what they've done is the first 3D CG Lupin, right? Every Lupin before now may have used computers to help animate, obviously, but they were all 2D. There may be like 3D behind the scenes. They didn't look 3D. This is like Toy Story 3D, right?
Yep.
Obviously looking much better than the original Toy Story because it's 2021.
Yeah, we'll get into that, but it looks great.
Yeah, and it's like you might get hesitant and whenever anything makes the switch to 3D like that, but this is definitely a Mario 64 situation where it works out. They somehow managed, even in 3D, to maintain all of the characteristics of, the character's signature movements and looks and facial expressions and everything somehow has completely made the transition. Jigen's face is a little weird, I think.
I like it though because it made him extra hot.
Not bad, but I do think like
it made him more human and hotter.
Yeah. But Lupin's face is just Lupin's face. Like there is no.
It's so the thing that stands out the most about those the character designs in the transition to 3D that no still image is going to catch for you. They are emotive to a surprising degree, like to the point that I think this was the most acting a Lupin character has ever done on the screen.
Yeah, maybe that could be, but yeah, they basically. I don't really see a downside to the switch to the CG thing at all, really, for this movie.
I mean, it's not like, cause like as you might see, the Ghibli 3D earwig does not look great
Yeah,
in
I mean, the
comparison.
only real disappointment is just that, like, hey, I'm a fan of 2D animation. I'd like to see it carry on and not fade away. But in this particular instance, it's like I don't think any harm was done other than the general harm to, oh no, there's less 2D animation in the world, but this
Yep.
isn't a bad 3D animation.
But like, no matter how hesitant someone is, like, or their complicated feelings about 3D, 30 seconds into this, you don't even remember that it's 3D. You're just like gaping at the spectacle. It's just, the movie.
Remember.
The movie is great and just dives right in.
There are none of those weird moments where the CG is like awkward or, sort of, breaks your fourth wall into remembering. And there's none of those uncanny valley moments where it's too real. It's still cartoony, but still, right? It's great.
Yep. In terms of a plot, the voice acting is top notch. So I only watch the sub. I can't speak to the dub.
I do know, sadly, that some, for the longest time, Lupin, all the characters had like the same voice actors. And it was only relatively recently, like within the past some number of years, that some of those original voice actors sadly passed away. Whoever they got, it sounds like Lupin. It sounds like everybody, right? There was no problem, basically. Whoever they got the new voice actors sound like the old voice actors. Sort of like how when there's Muppets, right? It's like, it's not Jim Henson doesn't do Kermit anymore, but if you watch a new Muppet thing, it sounds like Kermit the Frog, right? It's
right.
Like whoever they got doing it is doing it fine. It's the same situation here. Clearly, there are voice actors who can do the voices of these characters.
They're just perfect. Fine. If you did a blind test and played them talking from this and them talking from older Lupins, I would really struggle to tell the difference.
It's possible that even, it is 2021. I don't know that they did this. I have no evidence.
I don't think they did this.
It's possible that they used computers to help out or to make it sound even more like the original. But whether they did or didn't, you can't tell. So what does it matter?
So along those lines, the music... Because this is set in like the mid to late 60s, like specifically like it's a Showa era, like the movie is set in that time setting. Yep. And the music is the Lupin music from all out of the old Lupins. And they got to Yuji Ono. The soundtrack has the score has 61 songs in it. And a bunch of the compositions are like that Showa post-war jazz stuff from old Lupins. To the point that they even evoke the themes from the songs in Cagliostro specifically to make sure it feels like a Lupin movie. Right to the point at the very end, that song that creeps in when the movie's starting to end before the scene that ends every Lupin movie begins where everyone's escaping. For a second, I thought it was actually the song from one of those other Lupins. I had to go check.
Yeah. It did the same thing that every good soundtrack does when it's a soundtrack for like something that's a series, right? Yep. Star Wars, Indiana Jones, James Bond, right? Is they have those core musical motifs, right? And then they just remix and rearrange into something new. And you could do a bad job of it, but you can also do a great job of it. And I don't think even bad Lupin movies don't really mess up those, musical motifs ever.
Play the ending theme.
Just play it for fun.
Yeah, but play the ending theme to any Lupin that's ever been made, except the really bad ones that fuck this up. And anyone who's watched a bunch of Lupin just be like, that's the end to a Lupin. They're all running away now, and Zenigata is trying to chase them, and the credits are about to roll.
It's new, good music, but if you are a Lupin person, you identify it immediately as Lupin music. There is no question.
Yep. Right. So in terms of the movie plot itself, it's a by the book Lupin, except for a couple of minor pieces. Piece number one, this isn't a break from the trope because Lupin's enemies being Nazis is not uncommon, but in this case, it is nope, Lupin versus the Nazis.
Yes, it's
straight up.
It's so Indiana Jones, right? It's like there are a lot of the Lupin movies where he's not outright evil, end up being very Indiana Jonesy or more National Treasure-y kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like almost a sort of that sort of archaeological, historical.
This one is like a full-on Raiders of the Lost Ark.
The only difference between this and Indiana Jones, right, is that Indiana Jones just sort of like goes somewhere and doesn't really do anything. He's just sort of like there getting beat up until the bad guys lose.
Yep.
Right?
Like who beat the Nazis in Raiders of the Lost Ark? It wasn't Indiana Jones.
It was the Nazis. God.
But
where Lupin actually uses him and his allies, right, use their skills and abilities and such to directly, conquer and overcome many conflicts and challenges.
Yep. So the only break from the tropes of Lupin, because this movie is literally like Fujiko shows up at the moment you're thinking, I bet Fujiko's about to show up to do her thing. She betrayed, like it's just by the book, except it brings the lore of Lupin himself, like Lupin III, the ancestor of Arsène Lupin. It actually brings
Lupin
that.
First
Yes, Lupin the First.
Ancestor of Lupin III.
Yes.
This is grandpa, I guess, right?
So it brings that in directly in a way that I have never really seen in a Lupin before.
Right. In every other Lupin thing I've ever seen, they basically make no mention of Lupin II or Lupin the First or Lupin's mom or anything, right? It's like, it's just, here's Lupin III. Yeah, he's the grandson of Arsène Lupin. Because that's where his name comes from. But we're not going to mention that at all. We got nothing to do with it. Nothing. Right?
This one, it's like you get this flashback to a bunch of Nazi shit and like families and people separated and like a treasure that Arsène never got, and how Lupin like was almost destined to meet the person he meets and do the thing in this movie. That's a trope, or a beat, not a trope. It's a beat that I don't think we've ever seen in a Lupin work.
Yeah. Lupin movie has never been that I know of has never been about Lupin's history in any way, shape, or form.
And not to spoil anything, but the moment where you see,
it's in the title. The title of the movie is Lupin III.
The moment when you see that hat sitting at the end of that tunnel,
that was A+ moment right there.
Well, the first when they come into that whole area and the Nazi guy walks forward, all I could think was about a pious man kneeling down.
Exactly. It's very, very Indiana Jones.
Yep.
I can't. It's like, Anyway, so the only downside I can see, right, plot-wise, was that while all the characters were on point, right, I think that the three typical allies, right, I think Zenigata got the right amount of screen time that Zenigata usually gets.
Yep, because he got the extra beat of, all right, like there's like he works.
They're in the beginning scenes too. Right,
yeah.
To add to, but Jigen, Goemon, and Fujiko could have had maybe like one or two more things going on, but Jigen and Goemon especially, I think, barely appear in this movie.
But that's kind of by the book. A lot of the Lupins, those two show up in that fucking car and like save Lupin once or twice and otherwise don't matter.
They don't appear much, but I think they're appearing in this. I don't know. I have to time it to figure out exactly, but it feels like they even have less than the usual amount of screen time.
I think you're right, but I think that's partly because it acts
to give them like one or two more scenes to bring them up to their average.
I would say that the movie backed off on them a little bit because it actually took Lupin and the new character. There's always the new character in a Lupin who's only there.
New plot character who's in this movie only, and you never hear from them again every single time.
It gives both of them more development than they would either get in any other Lupin. Like that's the trade-off.
Yep, I think that is.
I did particularly enjoy the villains because there's two villains. Like even on the movie poster, you can look at it and be like, okay, those are the two villains. I like how
villain was more of like just a Nazi, but the other one, the more main villain that gets more focus, is actually somewhat interesting and complicated. Even
like also a Nazi, but like one's the Nazi fanatic, like Hitler's still alive in Brazil type of Nazi, and the second one is like complicated relationship with granddaughter and the world.
Right, he actually cares about a person.
Yeah. And as a villain duo, they work better than the villains tend to in a lot of Lupins.
Yeah, especially since it's not always clear, right? In a lot of Lupins, it's clear that like there's a boss and there's a square boss. That's the real boss.
Oh my God, the one where the boss keeps murdering with the fly swatter with the poison one by one, like that.
But in this Lupin, it's not always clear which of them is like the bigger boss. There's almost like this sort of up and down between them.
There's a power struggle between the two of them that was never resolved until the end of the movie.
At some points in the movie, like one of them is like sort of like threatening the other, like, don't, I'm in charge here. And then at other points it's like, no, I'm in charge here, right?
Yeah.
And it's not the usual Megatron Starscream thing where like one of them is just a jerk. And Megatron is actually in charge. It's more of a, I guess I can't use Transformers again. It doesn't really fit.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, it'd be like if there were two Megatrons and they were there at the same time.
There's an active power struggle between two people who are equally powerful and equally weak, just in different ways. Yes.
And it's kind of interesting.
Like, that's more nuanced than I think any Lupin villain has ever been, ever.
It's true. It's true, I think. And considering that the rest of the plot of the movie is so, I guess, cookie cutter, you sort of need that to like spice things up and keep some interest.
Now, I will say, I'm good with how cookie cutter the rest of it was, mostly because it was such
an excellent cookie.
It was such visual. It was a visual treat. Like, the acting was perfect. Everything was so good that it was like the best possible, completely plain sugar cookie.
Yeah, it's like, hey, let's make a chocolate chip cookie. It's just a chocolate chip cookie. We didn't spice it up with like, some sriracha chocolate chip cookie or peanut butter chocolate chip cookie or fancy expensive chocolate, right? It's just a fucking damn good chocolate chip cookie. Look at that. It's a perfect circle, exactly the right consistency and texture, perfectly baked.
Yep.
Like, don't come here expecting, your sriracha peanut butter cookie, right? But guess what? The absolute perfect chocolate chip cookie. You would tell me you wouldn't eat that? You'd be like, no, I'm not gonna eat that.
The other thing but along those lines, the other thing I would say is, I would add this to my list of, if someone had never seen or heard of Lupin at all, this would not be a bad one for them to see first.
If you might see this first. I think it would be great. Yeah, seeing this first is perfectly fine.
Because every Lupin, whenever anyone sees Lupin first,
if they become such a big Lupin fan that they're going deep and watching the ones where Lupin is evil, this starting one might cause a surprise.
I don't think that's a problem, because most people get started on Cagliostro.
Yeah.
People already start on Cagliostro, and then they watch, like, I don't know, Mamo, and they're like, what the fuck is wrong with Lupin?
Exactly. Yeah, this is a perfectly fine first Lupin movie.
Partly just because every Lupin movie, the first Lupin movie you see, you're going to learn the deal with these characters just by jumping right in. Like, there's no, like, the origin story movie to watch. Even the first cartoon, the first episode of the first show, just assumes you know who the fuck these people are and dives right in, because it kind of doesn't matter. You'll figure it out along the way.
And also, maybe, the fact that some of the side characters barely appear might intrigue someone who maybe, thinks, if you think Goemon is cool or something, or you think Jigen is cool, and you're like, oh, I want to see more Jigen. Well, guess what? There's plenty of other things you can watch that have a lot more Jigen action in them.
Well, like, case in point, the show, the Fujiko Mine anime series, that one almost does like an origin story of all the characters, but like a twisted one. But that one is the one I would not show to someone first, because all that nonsense,
that's no good for you.
That nonsense is completely uninteresting to you unless you already care about and are interested in these characters. And then you see like those versions of those characters and that evolution of the characters together, and you're intrigued by it and like you want to go deep. Someone could watch this and like, oh, I wonder what the deal is with Jigen, and then watch Fujiko Mine and Grave of Jigen Daisuke and be like, oh.
So I'm trying to think of anything negative to say, because it wasn't like a perfect movie at all.
I kind of would have liked it to be a little longer and have like one more beat.
I was going to say shorter.
I think they already cut a lot out. I think the movie was actually edited pretty much perfectly, because much like Indiana Jones and the Ark of the Covenant, like that whole story, it skips over a bunch of stuff, like when he just rides the submarine to the destination. This movie, like, Lupin and the girl are about to go break into a thing. It just cuts to them having already broken into the thing. It cuts to the good part.
It does do that, but at the same time, when it starts getting towards the end and you think like, oh, this is the climactic thing, it felt like I was starting to feel a little bit like, this is the final, and it's like that wasn't the final. There's another, and then another, and then it was over. And I was,
I don't know. The Hitler no Fukatsu was a beat that I both didn't expect and appreciated greatly.
I mean, it wasn't bad, but it felt like I looked at my watch at least one time, right? Not 10 times, but like one time.
I think part of the reason I didn't was that if I had to describe the animation, like the end result of watching everything, like kind of like what we talked about in the very beginning about the animation style, it's so rich and like thick and detailed and textured and stylized. Like all the little details on the screen were just such a pleasure to the eye that I kind of just wanted to keep seeing more of it longer. But to your point, the movie was edited well enough to like not make it drag on. And if they added more scenes, I might have started to feel that drag.
The other thing is that some of the action scenes, right, were excellent, especially like the laser, it's typical laser tunnel, right?
Oh, the laser tunnel was so good.
Such a cliche, right? It's like, you got to get.
But the twist with the cane and the hat.
Right, but not just the cane and the hat, but like the way it was animated and right.
When it slows down for the one moment.
Exactly. It's like, that may be the best laser tunnel I ever seen. Fuck you, Mission Impossible laser tunnel. Like you suck compared to this one. But on other parts, right, the action scenes were kind of okay, good, nothing to write home about, right? But if you think of like other Lupins, like Castle of Cagliostro, you've got like the iconic clock scene, right?
Yep. Or the really swimming through the canal scene.
Right. It's like this didn't have. Maybe laser tunnel scene is the one, but other than that, it didn't really have the X scene.
No.
Right?
Or it had a few.
One of them.
Like the two action scenes the 3 action scenes that actually stood out the most that were just. Actually, no, none of them were iconic, but they were all like above average because I was trying to list them. Like there's the fist fight he has, which was just like Cowboy Bebop levels. There was the plane fight when Fujiko comes in, like that was actually really fun. The bit where he grabs onto the front of the wing and then the girl grabs on and kind of knocks him off and they like go back and forth a little bit, like that was
that started with the scene where they're falling out of the sky with no
Yep, exactly. But then you've got the car chase in the very beginning.
Yep.
Which was
have a car chase at the start of a Lupin movie.
Exactly.
Lupin movie. Come on.
But yeah, you're right. There were many great action scenes, but there was no like the action scene.
Yeah, there's nothing like, some iconic thing to.
Well, like Babylon Gold. All right, they're on motorcycles on that clown face.
On the clown face. That's iconic. It's a very memorable scene.
But yeah, I would without reservation recommend watching this movie to anyone who would listen to Geek Nights.
If you're an anime person, if you like animation, you like animated movies at all. If you like Indiana Jones, if you like a Lupin, if you should be. Most people would be well served watching this movie.
Yep.
I'd say.
Like I would recommend this to like my dad, or my mom. Just like, hey.
How long is it? 2 hours? Right?
Not even. It's 93 minutes.
All right, you want 93 minutes of fun? It's got a better 93 minutes of fun. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. You want to watch a movie? Let's pick this one.
All right, I think that was a solid show. I'm also getting desperately hungry, so it was good timing.